About a month ago, Epidemic asked me to create a video for a new song for the artist Cospe. I hope I pronounced it right. This project was a bit different because I usually choose the music based on how I want the video to feel like. But for this project, Epidemic wanted me to make a cinematic video for this specific song without any sound design or other changes to it. Just plain music plus video. So here I want to show you how I approached this project, how I came up with a narrative, how I used visual storytelling in my shots, and also how I edited this video, of course. And at the end of the video I also have 3 tips for you that you can use to improve your videos. Let's go! I usually start creating videos by planning them, so I come up with an idea and a shot list and so on, and then later I choose the music based on how I want the video to feel. But in this case it was completely different. I had the song fixed and now I had to come up with ideas for this specific song to make it fit and to also bring a narrative or a storyline in the video. So I simply started by dragging the song into the timeline, as you can see here, and then I used titles to write my ideas for this specific song down. So let's get through it a little bit. Here you can see like the first titles that I used here was like some basic stuff. Like here you can hear something slow, a slow intro. So I simply wrote down slow intro here so that I know later, okay, we need something slow there, but should already look cinematic, look good, like keep the viewer hooked that he wants to see the rest of the video, of course. And then here you see the other title where I write down rattling sound for transition. So there you could hear this rattling sound. I already had the idea I could do something with the sound. And after that you hear the ticking clock, and that was the decision-making factor for the storyline here. Let's have a listen to it. So you hear this ticking sound there, and that gave me the idea that we could probably do something about time or with watches. And I also knew from Epidemic that they want me to make some cinematic shots for this video, and generally when companies approach me based on my YouTube channel for cinematic shots, that means cinematic travel footage. And that's why in the upcoming titles here you can see that already, transition, travel to main part of the video. I already knew that will be some travel shots here. And I also wrote that down based on how the song feels at certain parts. Like here where I write transition to main part of the video and we listen to it. It doesn't feel anymore like it's the intro of the video, it changed its pace already, but it also doesn't feel like our final destination or something like that. That's why I wrote down here transition or travel to main part of the video. And then here show a destination. When we now listen to the song, you hear this transition there where we're going from a like beady pace to a more slower, and that like feels perfectly. Like at this stage of the song we arrived somewhere and then we show some shots of what's happening, what we're seeing and so on. So there I wrote down show destination, and then we have the next transition in the music track. You can hear that here. So there it's going from slow to very fast paced again. And this is what I'm looking for all the time in the music track. What are the parts of the music track where I need to change something in my video to really make it feel like it fits together? And these are generally the parts where something changes in the music. So I wrote that down here, and as you can see I also wrote down something fast here in addition to travel montage, because it's changing so quickly from being slow to something much faster paced that I want to emphasize that later in the video. So that was like the first round of titling the music track to come up with ideas, and this ticking clock, as mentioned before, was really the decision-making factor for the storyline, because I knew I have the ticking clock, so it will be something time related, but I also knew it will be something cinematic travel related, and I need to bring these things together. And then it's quite obvious, like time and travel means like we don't want to waste our time, we want to make use of every second we have, etc. So this was my basic storyline, and then I already had this shot in my head of a ticking clock on a tower, hyperlapse, so that we have some motion in the shot. Of course, I enhanced the story later a little bit by standing there and watching on my clock, like waiting for something or someone, and then we have like the resolution of the story later at the end of the video, where then after another clock shot, suddenly a woman arrives there and I meet her as my girlfriend actually. And that's also an important part, like at the beginning of the video when I look at my clock, I'm obviously waiting for something, but the viewer doesn't know what I'm waiting for. And then at the end of the video there is the resolution, and that's basically what you're waiting for during the video. And then I already knew the storyline it will have, and that allowed me to plan the second stage, and these are like the bottom titles here. Let's turn them on. There you see Sunset City views. This is nothing really story related. This is just at the beginning of the video to show off a little bit. Then I planned hyperlapse of clock at the tower because I knew we actually have a tower like that here in the city. Then more hyper and time-lapse shots showing me, and eventually some more clock shots. Also got that in there. And then me looking on my watch, leaving after that. Start traveling, motorbike shots, hiking. And as you can see in the timeline, instead of really planning every single shot or so, I just use the different segments of the music track and I write down what I want to show within that segment. But it's really like up to me how I shoot it later and what it will exactly be. And that gave us a lot of freedom shooting the video, and this is what we will talk about now. I was actually quite busy when we started shooting this video, so I delayed it a little bit and we only ended up having 2 weeks to fully shoot and edit the video, which was actually a bit tight. But I knew already that I will need an intro and an outro sequence in the city at night time, so I had some shot list planned already for that, and that usually doesn't take that much time there when I have a shot list. But I also had some parts open of the video where it was just basically random travel footage, and there I knew already that I had some travel footage left that I couldn't use before, because a few months ago we went on a really nice trip to get shots from a How to Start FPV video, but I ended up not using them because it turned out during the trip that I wasn't able to fly my FPV drone there for several reasons. So it was basically a trip for nothing back then. But I also thought like this travel footage, there's a beautiful sunrise footage with from the mountain with the cloud ocean that you saw in the video. This footage is so nice that I will 100% be able to use it later. And so when Epidemic Sound hit me up, I knew, okay, that could be a good fit actually, and it was. But I also knew that only the footage from this trip wouldn't be enough, and that's why I planned another trip in the same area but with some stops in between, so that we get a good variety of footage. And to really ensure that all these shots look good, I wanted to shoot everything at sunrise and sunset time. So it was a 3-day trip, and I really planned to be at every spot that I wanted to go to at these times, just to ensure that everything looks good. And it turned out it worked quite good. On the last day we had a bit of cloud cover there, so shots could have turned out a little bit better, but it was still perfectly fine. What was a bit special during the trip though was that I used the telelens from the Mavic 3 at 160mm quite a lot, and you probably saw some shots in the video where that made you thought like, how did he shot that? And it was likely this lens. It's just there's no other drone with such a lens on the market right now, and overall this lens does not have the best optical quality. You definitely have to tweak it a little bit in post, but because of this 160mm focal length on a drone, it just looks so special. It's absolutely worth getting some shots with it, and that is what I did there, and I think that really added up to the video. And aside from that, really getting all the travel footage wasn't that special really, but we always focused on capturing a huge variety of different angles and some close-up and some wider shots to be able to put all the footage together later as sequences in the timeline. And I also had a few shots or sequences planned of looking on my clock and then hurrying up to the next place, because I knew already from planning in my timeline before that I will need sequences like that. And shooting those time lapses was actually quite straightforward too. All that I did there was to simply put my camera on a tripod and started shooting. So I stepped in front of the camera at first, did my stuff there. Like at first this scene where I use my phone and then look on my clock and leave the frame, and the other one where I'm looking around in that shopping area and then I leave the frame as well. Like, you don't see me leaving the frame there. But after leaving the frame, I always kept the camera rolling for a few minutes. I think it was 7-8 minutes or something like that. And then I stopped recording. So shooting those clips was actually quite easy, but the magic happened in the edit, where I duplicated each clip and copied them on top of each other. And then I had to mask out the top clip and speed up the bottom clip to, I think it was around 20 times the original speed or something like that, so that I have the time lapse at the bottom or in the background, and I have me moving in normal speed in the foreground. Now, it would usually take a lot of time to mask myself out frame by frame, and I actually thought before that I would have to do so, but on the day where I wanted to edit this video, I woke up in the morning, I looked at my phone and I saw some YouTube tutorials about a new plugin called Keeper. And this plugin uses AI to recognize people and mask them out automatically, and it actually works really, really good. So when I started editing, I instantly bought this plugin. It was, I think, $49 or something like that, so a no-brainer. And it was really that I just dragged the plugin on the top clip. It automatically masked out myself. I had the time lapse in the background and it was perfect. Plugins are amazing. If you get the right plugins for the right job, that can save you so much time, and it's definitely worth investing some money in it. And after shooting those time lapses, we got all the other nighttime shots there. Daniel filmed me for that, and it was actually nothing complicated there. We used the Sony a7S III for all the nighttime shots. I mean, it's a low light piece. It is not too complicated to get good shots even in the night with this camera. But then there were also the two other time lapses that I shot of night traffic, and there you see this nice blurred lines from the car lights everywhere, light painting or however you want to call it. And there I used a shutter speed of 1/15 of a second to generate this effect. And these time lapses, I shot them on the Sony a7 IV in raw photos. So these are not video time lapses actually. These are the full 33 megapixel photos there that I then edited together to time lapses. And it was actually quite fun to shoot those time lapses. Didn't have much time for it. I was actually out with my girlfriend in the shopping center, and later we wanted to go to a cinema movie, and I already knew that I will have to shoot time lapses that I could shoot around the shopping center, so I brought all my gear. And then while we were waiting for the movie to start, I just quickly got out of the shopping center, got these two time lapses within half an hour or so, and it was done as well. And there's also another shot that did not turn out as I wanted it to be. It's a drone shot at the end of the video where I ride my motorbike and the drone gets up and slightly forward. Not a complicated shot overall. I just gave my Mavic 3 to my friend Roma to get it for me while I'm riding my motorbike. But I wanted the shot to look like that the road points perfectly to the city with a sunset in the background, and you can see mountains and so on. But right now it's April, and in April in Chiang Mai the air pollution is usually very bad, and it is right now. So you can barely see the city skyline, and you also cannot see the mountains there. And that's why the shot completely did not turn out as I wanted it to be. I would say it still works to tell the story, because it's still like the road pointing away from the camera, or the drone in that case, while you see me riding the motorbike. Then in the next shot I arrive in the city at nighttime. You also see sunset time, so it still works from a storytelling perspective. But from a visual storytelling perspective, I would have loved not to have this air pollution there. Just couldn't get it, had to take what I was able to capture. Editing-wise, I didn't find this project that difficult, to be honest, but it was also to a certain degree because of that Keeper plugin. Otherwise it would have taken a lot longer. And you can see the timeline here. I would say let's go quickly through it to show you some of the parts that could be interesting for you. First, what I want to mention here is when it comes to transitions. Like here, for example, you see a zoom transition together with some earthquake effect. And yeah, just quickly how I did that. Here you see earthquake, and I use keyframes here to start that earthquake effect a bit later in the clip and not at the very beginning. Done. Like as you can see here, I have 1-0 keyframe here, and then I ramp it up to 33, and yeah, that creates the earthquake effect. But what actually wanted to show you here is a plugin that I use often from Ryan Langle, which is these transition layers. You see zoom in 1, zoom in 2, smooth transition layers from Ryan Langle that I use here. It's quite nice because you can overlay these transitions, and it's like like you don't need like the clip to be longer as it would usually be, as you would have with normal transitions. So you just overlay them on top and you have your transition effect. But important is, when it comes to transitions, that you use them in a good way and not randomly. Like here, for example, you see the first shot of me looking at the tower with the clock, and then I used the zoom transition to zoom into the hyperlapse of the clock. So there it fits perfectly. So I actually zoom to where we're going. It's also another good example for that. Here I have the hyperlapse from my drone at night, and then I transition via a zoom with the same effect basically into the time lapse of the traffic on the ground. And as you can see here, I actually stack those transitions. I use a zoom in and a pan up because I want to simulate the camera motion that I would use if I would film this transition. If I would shoot this transition in reality, I would have to move the camera down, and then the camera at the bottom would point up again. And this is why I use the pan up transition effect together with the zoom in effect. Like the zoom in is the going down, like basically moving forward. Then at the end, moving up, I need this pan up effect there. That's why what I like about this plugin as well, I can stack multiple transitions and therefore emulate this kind of camera motion from the transition. As you see, it comes out pretty well too. And then of course in the second clip, in the time lapse, I also continue the motion from the transition by zooming in here. Like you see, like during the clip, I'm like zooming in more. It's also all animated in post. Just important that you always want to somehow continue the motion from your transitions in the clips, and you want to start the motion before, like here I have that forward motion already that allows me to do the zoom in transition to the time lapse, and then I animate in the time lapse the zoom so that I continue that forward motion throughout all clips. That's also something that you should always think about when it comes to editing transitions. Continue movement from your clips. And here's another example where I don't use transitions, but I also use the camera movements plugin from LenoFX. And that is here that I want to enhance the shots a bit to give them a quicker feel. Like, so when we watch the sequence, you see it feels pretty quick. And this is mostly because of those zooms. When I turn them off, you see it's still okay, but it feels a lot slower because there's a lot less motion in the shots. When I turn them back on again, just adding those zooms, it adds so much. Again, I could also have done that via keyframes manually, but I use that motion plugin, movements plugin from LenoFX here to do that quickly because it saves me some time in post. Not sponsored, by the way. And here again, I use the pen left plugin again from Ryan Nangle here to transition from the car into this shot here that I did with the Mavic 3 with the telelens there. That's where you can see all the parallax. It looks great. There, it is actually exactly that example. Like here in that clip, I use speed ramping here at the beginning to have a fast motion. And then I use that pan left effect here from Ryan Nangle to transition into that motion. It's not only that effect, I also did some keyframing here. Here I set some keyframes to animate the first clip from the right to the left so that it feels a bit smoother, because actually this clip was too steady before. And here's another example of good use of transitions. Here we have these two shots with a cat, and I combine these shots with a zoom out effect, but instead of just zooming out from the center of the frame, I zoom out from the cat. And I do that by using a plugin, I think it's also from Ryan Nangle, it's called Target Zoom Transitions. If I would only do the zoom out effect from the center of the frame, you can tell it looks pretty bad because we're just going from the center even if the cat is there, and that doesn't really fit. So instead what this plugin allows me to do is to move the center point around on the cat or anywhere else, wherever I want to place it here. Like I could place it literally everywhere, just redo it. And as you can tell, because I have it on the cat, it just looks so much better. It really looks like I would zoom out from the cat. That's really important to think about stuff like that. When you use the zoom out and zoom in effects, always think about what subject are you zooming into or out from, and try to match that with a plugin like that, because if you always only zoom into the center of the frame, usually doesn't come that good. And another transition that I used here, it's pretty standard as well. It's a mass transition. Here you see the car driving through the frame. And now when I go here frame by frame, you see I just masked out the end of the car, and that's why me and my girlfriend appear there. Let's just rewatch that. chip. Search for mass transition here on YouTube and you will find many tutorials about that. It's actually really easy to do. Just takes a bit of time sometimes. And now if we look at the whole timeline, you can actually see it's super simple, mainly because I didn't have to do any sound design, like it's completely empty at the bottom. But aside from that, it's also mostly just jump cuts and a few transitions wherever it fits, a bit of motion blur and so on added. So it's really not a complicated edit, and I think that's also a good takeaway from this video here. Your edits don't necessarily have to be complicated. If you think in sequences and if you have a good story, a good narrative, then even if you mostly do jump cuts, it comes out really good. All these fancy transitions and so on, you can insert them sometimes where they fit, but if your video is not already great without all those transitions, then they won't do that much. Also, of course, I did a lot of color grading here, but this is another story. Color grading is always a bit more difficult. I have a color grading course for that, which you will find in the description. So just check that out if you want to learn more about color grading. But now let's come to the 3 learnings from this video. And the first learning I have from you from this project is definitely that you should get shots whatever you do or wherever you go, because you never know what you use it for in the future. It was not just related to the project we shot before that I then used, or the trip that we shot before that I then used for this project, but there were also lots of other shots in the video that I just shot randomly while I did some trips with my girlfriend in the mountains and so on, because even after the trip that we actually did for this video, I felt like I just didn't have enough footage for it. I could have made it happen, but the video would definitely not be as nice as it is right now. Sometimes you just want to have a bit more variety, especially to make quick cuts and not having to leave your shots there for too long. It engages the viewer a bit more overall. So really important, and you can also integrate shooting your videos more into your life. Good example here is that I got the time lapses while we were waiting for a cinema movie to start. That's really good to know. You don't necessarily have to always free up time to shoot your videos. You can also integrate it in the time that you already use for other stuff. And another learning that I have from you from this project is that you should take some time to plan your visual storytelling when you plan your videos, and don't get overwhelmed while doing so, because what I noticed is that when you think about visual storytelling, it comes into your mind that all of your shots need to be perfectly planned to make every single shot bring your story across, but this is actually not the case, because as you could see in this video, there were only the time lapses really at the beginning, where I really planned the visual storytelling before, and then maybe the motorbike shot at the very end, like the drone shot there, and the shots in between, like where I looked on my shots. But this were only the real shots where I did visual storytelling that I planned before, or where I generally planned a sequence before to move the story forward. But because I did that for these key moments of the video, the other shots, the random travel footage, automatically falls into place because they happen in the context of the shots that you saw before, or they also get context through the shots that I show after. And this is why you only really have to really perfectly plan visual storytelling in some key moments of the video, and the rest automatically will work out. Of course, all the other shots, they have to be somehow related to it. If you just show completely random footage, that's not going to work, but at least you don't need to plan every single moment of your video perfectly. It's usually enough to just do it for a few moments. And the next learning is that when you're not good with planning shot lists or scripting your videos or so, then try to only script and plan as much as you can right now, as much as you can imagine, and then go out already and shoot all of it and bring it into your timeline, edit all of it as far as you can, and then do exactly what I did in the first step here in this video, which is planning it via titles in your timeline. Just put some titles in there and write down what comes into your mind during your edit, what kind of shots you could put in there to bring your story across or to tell your message, because it's oftentimes the case that if we're in a notes app writing a script or making a shot list, we're not really creative. Like, there's not much visual happening in front of us. But if we already work on our video, if we already got some shots and then we're already editing those, then that automatically makes us a bit more creative, and that helps to come up with new ideas for other parts of your video. So it's not always the case that I have all of my videos 100% planned out before. Oftentimes I also just have maybe 80% of it or a bit more, and then there's always some gaps in my timeline that I need to fill out. And in that case, I just put some titles in there. For this, I want to get this in this shot or this in this sequence, and here's something else. And then I make another shot list in my notes app based on these ideas that I have then from my editing. And I go out again, get those shots, insert them in the blanks, and done. And I think this technique can help you a lot, especially in the beginning if you're not used to really making scripted videos and so on. And what also can help you to do so is to watch this video here in the corner where I teach you my whole process of how I make my YouTube videos. Check that out as well. I hope to see you there. Okay, battery empty.